when I first moved to Vermont, I moved for like a pastoral internship, sort of pastoral residency program, essentially to train to see if I could be in ministry. And at the time, I had connected with an elderly man, an old man who used to be a pastor, and he would call me every week or so, and we'd talk for a little bit. And I remember one thing he always told me was to preach the word. He just kept saying it, preach the word. And I remember after a while, I started rolling my eyes, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know, I've read that verse as well. But he just kept insisting, what you have to do, Adam, is you have to preach the word. And I think I know why he was insisting on that. Because I think that there's a tendency for pastors to want to say something new and to want to say something interesting or really woke. And a perfect example is Eric Mason. The speech that I reviewed that he gave at the ERLC conference. It's only 15 minutes long. I encourage you to listen to it. But the beginning part, he was preaching the word, and he's a good preacher. He's charismatic. He's and I mean that like he's got personality. He's got charisma. And he's a good preacher when he's on the word, and he gave a pretty good, exposition. There's some things, obviously, that I wouldn't quite draw from the passage that he did, but in general, it was really good. And then in the second half, he starts going away from the word. He starts talking about the woke talking points, and what happens is he's a disaster. He's an absolute train wreck. In fact, there is a section in it where he's not talking about the scripture anymore. He's talking about being woke, his own philosophy, his own ideology of wokeness, and he contradicts himself within the span of seconds. Let me show you what I mean.
And so when you talk to African Americans, now you have on one side, you have a white frailty. Then on the other side, you have blacks who are dealing with race fatigue syndrome. So you got race fatigue meeting white frailty. White frailty says, I refuse to talk about that. Blacks on the other side, I'm sick of going back and forth with you about it.
So you see, he's got the white frailty over here that says they don't want to talk about it, and then he's got the black fatigue that says I don't want to go. I'm tired of going back and forth with you about it. Those things contradict. Look, here's the thing: if you're a pastor, if you're a preacher, you need to stay on script. We have the message. We have it. It's in the scripture. You don't have to add to it. There's no white fragility in white frailty in the Bible. There's no black fatigue in the Bible. These are ideas that have no basis in reality. They're not scriptural for sure. These are things that he's just making it up as he goes along. And what happens when you make things up as you go along, you sometimes will sound very foolish, just like Pastor Eric Mason did here, where he contradicts himself in the span of 10 seconds. He also later goes on to be the Angloid guy when he says that,
and you're wondering why multi-ethnicity isn't happening at your church. It's because you have a person that's black on the outside, but Angloid on the inside.
If you're not woke, but you're black on the outside, but Angloid on the inside. This is the thing. When you go off script, when you're not preaching the word anymore, and you decide to go and do something else, you end up sounding pretty foolish sometimes. And so my best advice is for these woke Christians, why don't you go back to the Bible? Let's stop adding to the gospel. Let's stop pretending like your woke level is your sanctification level. I mean, honestly, that's just that's the silliest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and I want you to stop. I'll stop making my videos if you stop saying dumb things like that. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. God bless.
And you're wondering why multi-ethnicity isn't happening at your church. It's because you have a person that's black on the outside, but Angloid on the inside.